Live, and we still have a 2-minute thing, so start it up.
1 minute.
So 1 minute now. So
Memorize ourselves.
being on is good. We're live,
Hello.
everybody, on HWRSD.
We need an opening monologue.
It's live.
It's Tuesday night.
Aaron, can you do me a favor?
Hi, Michelle.
Can you email me this?
You're welcome, I'll put you on
I'll scan
speaker.
it, but if you email it, it's easier. Thank you.
Was I emailed this?
No, could you share can you share the docs?
Yeah, I can email it to folks.
Okay.
I'll
Or
get
you
it.
can-
I'll just email it to the whole crew, yeah.
I try to put everything on my iPad,
Or if you
and
do
that
it,
way I
you
have
can-
it.
Right.
Okay,
We have Chromebooks here.
sure. Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah, John and I have been putting finishing touches on it today even, so.
Thank you. No.
Excellent. All right, it's 5:30. It's time for the Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee Finance and Operations Subcommittee. Mike Terabasi,
Here.
Michelle Boudreau,
Here.
and Sean Kennedy. We are all here. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry.
All right, let's start off this meeting, as we always do, with the cost-cutting savings that we're doing with the district.
So the last item you'll see on there is, we have, I think I shared a little bit. We
Oh, yeah.
have had a number of, it's been fast and furious with sort of out-of-district positives and negatives, right? So we've had a couple we had to send, we're gonna have to put out, we've had a couple come back, we've had a couple other issues. So we just sort of aggregated that into one line item, rather than trying to put every single line item. It just got too much, and we honestly don't know exactly where some of them stand, but we're estimating will be about 115,000 to the good when all is said and done. You know, it, like with anything in a budget, it's a best guess, right? And that's sort of our best guess at this time, trying to be as conservative as possible. And that is embedded in this budget.
And just as a note to anyone who's listening, that the $115,000 is not taking anything away from anyone. All of our students get everything that they need, as their IEPs say. This is just people who are moving out of district. Correct?
Yes.
All right.
And if I may, that brings our grand total since we began this process to $895,491.11.
Great. And there's even some stuff that doesn't have a price on it too, on the top. We might want to figure out what that,
Yeah, we'll take a look
the
at
first two lines. Awesome, excellent, thank you. Anyone, any questions on this before we move on? All right, let's go into the preliminary budget information for 25.
So John and I thought we would sort of walk you through our presentation that we'll be giving. I think a lot of it is because you've been here, it's going to be cold hack to you, so we may kind of push through some slides rather quickly, but we'll focus on the items that are largely new. There are some items that are being repeated from last year, things we just say to reiterate every year, every budget cycle. So I've got the presentation up here. But you can follow along on the handouts I provided. So our first slide reiterates the district 5-year strategic plan. We engaged in a year-long process. It resulted in a series of strategic priorities that we are working on right now. We update the school committee. John updates the school committee pretty regularly on that. Pretty much almost every meeting, John's providing some sort of update on that. So if you're interested in that work, you can come to school committee. Yay! So for fiscal '25, we have 2 strategic initiatives that we have budgeted. There is some math professional development that goes hand in hand with some of the new math programs that we've engaged at the elementary levels. And then in this past year, we have added 9th grade to our vocational students. We also included down below the very specific strategic objectives. So if you go into our strategic plan, you can look up those strategic objectives, 1A and 1C. I won't dig into those, but you can read those.
How many students are taking advantage of the 9th grade program next year?
Was it 17 new students?
I
I
can look that
don't
up.
remember, yeah, I don't have it with me at the moment.
Oh, I can't, because my phone is being used.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
But,
I do want to say, I do recall it was 17,
17 students?
yeah, but we can validate that, for sure.
so,
So some of our accomplishments, particularly related, these are all items that have something to do with our strategic plan. Some of them actually cover multiple strategic objectives. So we have completed a multi-tiered systems of support document that is in version 2.0 right now. Is it still 2.0?
Things 1.2.
Oh, I thought we were at
That's okay, it
2.0.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's not the first iteration.
I'm
Is
sorry,
that
I thought we were
right?
at 2.0. I thought you had labeled that the latest version 2.0. I apologize, I will change that. We've implemented our early literacy and math K-8 curriculum. That is where the professional development from the prior slide comes. And we've also trained teams at the schools to implement comprehensive school threat guidelines, assessment guidelines, I'm sorry, there's a missing word there. So that is part of the safety side of our strategic plan. And I believe the next few slides, I'm going to turn things over to John.
Okay, so there have been some discussions about what rubrics we use and whether the taxpayers are getting any value for the money, so I wanted to just share a couple of pieces with you. These first few slides have to do with 10th grade achievement on the statewide assessment system known as MCAS. One of the things we do is we look at our peer districts, LVPEC, and the statewide average, and you can see, it's a little hard to see there, but the green line, which is ours, is leading all 4 categories. So the highest one is the peer district average, because these are districts that are most similar to us in the state, which is a more competitive group than the LVPEC as a whole, or the state as a whole. But in 2023, we were above the average even for our peer group, which put us, of course, well above for the LVPEC and the state as well. Moving on to the next one, the same type of chart. So this is math achievement, and you can see there sort of more dramatically, we are ahead of our peer district average, above this LVPEC, and above the statewide average by a fairly wide margin. Next, there are some questions about the success of graduates. And, you know, enrollment in higher ed is not the only measure of success of graduates, but you can see that there we can't give you this fine grade analysis because we don't have access to all the individual districts, but we can compare to the state. You can see that where our graduates are enrolling in higher ed at much higher rates than the statewide average, and continuing that advantage into the second year, which is really critical because if students do the second year of a traditional 4-year program, then they're much more likely to graduate. So most of the dropout occurs after the first year, and you can see that we are maintaining high levels. In fact, in the second year, our enrollment rate is still higher than, you know, the first year rate for the state as a whole. So just wanted to share some of those results with the community.
So I will take over again. If you've seen our presentation before, this slide should look very familiar. I've updated it for fiscal '23, and you'll notice the trend over the past 15 years in low income has been very significantly upward in really the state, Hamden, Wilbraham, all of our local communities. There have been a few changes in how they calculate that, but if you look at the actual numbers, there aren't enormous shifts. The 21 to 22 seem to bump things up a little bit, separate from the normal trend, so that might be a little above. But it does look like this year things have leveled off a little bit, so when things level off, you sometimes see a downward bump like you're seeing. So our hope is that things will level off. It's leveled off not just for us, but for the other local communities and the statewide average. So that's a little bit promising. We don't expect that to drop significantly, but at least hopefully it will hold steady.
How does that impact you? How does that impact you?
So low-income students on average cost about 35% more per student to educate. That is one of many factors in the cost to educate students. Some of our low-income students are also homeless students. When we have students who become homeless, there are other triggers that kick in, so we have required McKinney-Vento transportation. So at our last school committee meeting, we talked about a large increase in the cost of our transportation, and that was very largely due to McKinney-Vento. So we may have a student who becomes homeless and they find temporary housing in Springfield, Chicopee, West Springfield. We are then obligated to transport them back to attend school here. So they have that right, and we often have to go to a private van company. Those vans can cost anywhere from $150 to $300 a day, depending on where we're going and how many other students that van may be driving.
Outside of homeless, why would it be more expensive other than the obvious free lunch programs, things like that? But what would be the drivers?
So you mean other than homeless,
Yeah.
low-income students?
Yeah, what is it?
Low-income students more frequently don't attend preschool. You know, we've talked about the cost and the benefits of full-day preschool for students in the past. Low-income students frequently have parents who both have to work, sometimes multiple jobs. Therefore, they're not, say, home to read to their children and things like that early on, to help them with homework, to give them some of the direction to get work done and things like that, that, you know, we expect from a sort of traditional nuclear family by definition.
It's really about the comorbidities that you see with low income and a number of other conditions that are more costly to educate. So the incidence of disabilities among low-income students is higher, often because of access to health care and other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that causes us to need to provide more remedial services.
Right. Okay. So this next slide is to answer a question. It's been in the past couple. We often get compared to, so people will hear Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, other comparable towns that are municipal districts sharing their budgets, and they are significantly lower in terms of pure dollars than ours. These are some of the costs that a regional school district absorbs that would normally be picked up by a town. So if we were just the Hamden or just the Wilbraham school district, municipal school district, the towns would be paying all of these costs. But as a regional school district, we bear those costs. So getting into where we're sitting this year for budget increases. So these are our major increase drivers. Contractual salaries, this is prior to some of the reductions that we've made, so I'll show you the reductions later. So this was our increase prior to taking out some of the salaries for Green Meadows and things like that, but I wanted people to see that this was, aside from sort of eliminating some of those positions, we have real increases in this area, right? So we want to share that before. Instructional technology, that is a lot of the items that were on capital. We've got normal increases. Electricity has gone up pretty significantly. District programs, that's a pretty normal increase. Actually probably a little lower than usual. Hampden County retirement has gone up significantly in each of the past 2 years. Last year it went up 9.25%, this year it's going up 4.25%. You'll see the additional strategic plan impacts on there. Insurance, which we've discussed before, vocational program, and the non-LPVEC vocational programs. So getting into the instructional technology increase that I shared. So this is a breakdown of where we approximate these costs. These are items that have never really been budgeted previously, that are directly related to servicing students. We anticipate needing 440 Chromebooks per year going forward to maintain our one-to-one programming, if that's what we wish to do. That is 220 students coming into 6th grade every year and 220 students coming into 9th grade every year. Once those age out of middle school and then high school, those devices, those would then be sent to the elementary schools to be put on carts. We can get another couple usable years of life on those. So that keeps us from having to buy Chromebooks at the elementary level. Classroom projectors, those have been on our capital plan. We've replaced many this year at Minichog. I think most of them, in fact, with the funds we received. But our projectors at every other level are now in need of being replaced as well. So middle school. So we're anticipating if we could replace 25 of them a year district-wide, that would be meaningful. We could work with that. Staff laptops is something that hasn't typically been budgeted. As you recall, in past years we've done things with sort of excess funds that was frowned upon, so we're trying to put those things in the budget. And then if we're going to maintain the one-to-one programming, we do have software that is necessary for security and control. So predominantly with students who take those devices home. So when we're doing a one-to-one program, those students are taking those devices home. It gives us a degree of control over those devices, not only in the classroom, but while they're at home. So some of our major budget savings. So you'll see the Green Meadows School middle school reductions and the PWB staff reductions. Those are reductions that bring down that total contractual increases cost. So those are, all of those are baked in. Retiree health insurance, actually we were able to reduce by $106,000 this year. As you'll recall, we pushed efforts to keep the Scantic Valley Regional Health Trust to a 0% increase for active employees in fiscal '25. So that is a net $0. We were initially predicting, I want to say, about $130,000 increase, or 3%. So we're happy with that. We've had some retirements during the budget process. So from version 1 up to this version, I've made sure to calculate those in. And then we've had some staff reductions in student services. We've reduced 2 full-time positions to 0.75.
Is the Scantic money in here?
Retiree health insurance, I believe, was on that list. I could put the
Health insurance.
oh, is health insurance in there? It might be.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I got it.
Cool.
Yeah.
A question about how we can have a reduction from retirement. So is that because the people retired and the people they're getting replaced with are less experienced and
Is
they
this
cost less?
Are we,
Or are there
Yes.
people retiring and not being replaced?
they're retiring and they're being replaced by staff who cost less. So
Okay.
in a typical retirement, we can save, anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. We try to hire. I plan for somewhere in the middle of the salary schedule for replacement. So if we have a vacancy, we don't plan to be at the bottom. We don't plan to be at the top. We plan to be in the middle. And when we hire, we make an effort, to hire people who have some experience, right? We don't, and we do have some cases where we get wonderful candidates who are brand new, but we find that experienced teachers matter. Yeah. So as we've talked about all along, we've had some major variances in our revenues, things that often stay fairly consistent, but these have varied quite a bit. So we've lost our ESSER grant, we shared that. Our E&D fiscal '24 versus what we spent in '24 versus what we're able to spend this year has reduced. Athletics revolving, you'll recall, athletics revolving account was in a deficit this past year, and we had to provide some budgetary money to support it. We are trying to, I removed that offset to try to use less of the revolving fund to support the program. We will see where that ends up. If we can put some of that back in coming years, we will. So there might be a little bit more available next year in the '26 budget once we see where things are. Circuit breaker was a bit of we've had increases all along, but our circuit breaker this year went up significantly, so we're gonna have another $340,000 to apply to circuit breaker, which really offsets most of the ESSER grant loss. Transportation reimbursement, we get a credit from LPVEC. For some reason, we actually budgeted in '24 and they did not provide that credit in '24, but they have assured us that they're going to be providing, oh, I'm sorry, that's a separate offset. This is our actual Chapter 74 transportation reimbursement went up by $100,000. I apologize, we're still getting a credit and that's being applied against our transportation budget. In the budget, so my apologies, I got those mixed up. They're both identical amounts, but that is, the $100,000 is coming out of our transportation costs, which is why we don't have a significant increase in transportation. We did get a little bit additional money in fiscal '24 that I anticipate we'll get in '25 in 2 of our grants, IDEA and Title I. And then interest income, we anticipated getting about $40,000 more in interest income this year. We have moved to using a sweep account with People's Bank, and that's a pretty conservative estimate. Once we see what we earn this year, and if interest rates hold the same for next year, we may be able to increase that a little bit next year. It's a small, and kudos to Christina Gagnon, who sort of led that effort. She saw some opportunities with People Bank and took them.
Great.
So, in the past couple of years, we have made some commitments to reducing staff where we could. Some of these reductions, so these are 2 years of staffing reductions over the past couple of years to meet budget. Some of them are positions, the first few are positions that were funded on ESSER in fiscal '24 that we eliminated so that we could use more ESSER funds to support the budget. So while these are not budgeted savings, it allowed us, by eliminating those positions last year, it allowed us to use more ESSER funds this year, maintain those ESSER funds for this year. We wouldn't have had those. In Green Meadows, last year we also eliminated an assistant principal. Once the middle school had pretty much bottomed out, it really was determined that we didn't need an assistant principal there. So the next group are all positions that will be eliminated this year to meet budget, but also due to some changes. So given Green Meadows School's middle school situation, you'll see the many positions at Green Meadows School. We've made a commitment to move students out of Thornton Burgess this year. So that will lead to a few positions that we won't necessarily need. We won't need as much custodial support there. We also won't need one of the codas and head coaches because we have those resources available at the high school, so we can do some shared resources. Some of the teacher and the 2 para positions, those are positions that will be available due to an out of district. So that's sort of one of those swap positions that we talked about. We have a couple students that will need to go out of district. And so those are the staff who worked with those students, and we won't need them following that. Then we do have some reductions in student services admin staff.
So the 16 3/4 people that we've eliminated over the last year or 2, how many were ESSER? Just the top 3? Or there are more than
So
one?
the first 5 on that list were ESSER. There are 6 positions in there that are ESSER, I can tell you. Were ESSER. Yeah.
Do we still have, do we still have people that were initially hired with ESSER that are still gonna remain after ESSER?
That have filled vacant positions largely, yes.
So, okay, maybe I should rephrase that. Are there positions we created with ESSER dollars
Yes.
that they will retain?
I believe there are 2 positions that are positions, really, one is both integral to our strategic plan.
That's fine, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand.
that was the
Yeah.
plan, yeah. Should be 2. So if we go there. So you may recall, we shared this last year. This is a reminder that last year we faced a 14% increase to our private out-of-district placement costs. This was something OSD did. OSD looks at inflation, and they make adjustments to some of the services that we receive from various private entities. And they allow them to increase their rates accordingly. So OSD believed that 14% was necessary for those private schools to,
I want to get their lobby for the regional transportation line.
yeah. Exactly. So, yes, so this is just the memo. We wanted to just sort of memorialize that memo. And that also leads us into, so this year, the legislature enacted a reserve relief program. So if you had increased costs due to that increase in private school placements, you could put in for reserve relief. Unfortunately, our net increase of 13.5% was not adequate to qualify. So we did not reach the threshold for that. So that was a challenge for us. So another item that we're facing is, you may hear about Student Opportunity Act funding. So many districts, predominantly districts that are considered gateway communities, are receiving additional Student Opportunity Act funding. There are 212 districts across the state that are not receiving SOA funds. Those are largely hold harmless districts that are in the situation we're in. Nonetheless, in the grand tradition of unfunded mandates, we need to submit a 3-year Student Opportunity Act plan. We will have that plan available for the school committee to approve at the March 21st meeting. I completed that a couple days ago. John and other staff have taken a look at it, and we will submit that in time for April 1st, which is the deadline, assuming the school committee approves it in March. Reminder though that everything we're putting in there is based on $0 in new aid from the Student Opportunity Act.
So so we've got to fill out the paperwork, but we don't expect that we'll get anything.
We not only don't expect it, we know very well that we don't. It's beyond expectations. We know we won't. It's.
And not only do we have to fill out the paperwork, but they expanded the reporting requirements.
Yeah.
And didn't they, when we sent it in last year, didn't they send it back to us? And
No, that was me. That was my experience in a
Oh.
prior district.
oh, okay.
So we last did this 3 years ago, so they last did in 2021, 22, I think I did the last one, but it was for districts that didn't receive money or much money in Student Opportunity Act, there was sort of an abbreviated form, there was a short form, that was really just a couple pages. I think you'll see this is about 8 pages of sort of written documentation, largely taken from our strategic plan. We don't have any new initiatives separate from the strategic plan because we have no money for new initiatives, so we're really just regurgitating items that are in our strategic plan.
What would happen if we didn't submit this plan that doesn't seem to matter?
And we could have funding withheld.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always hold they always
The
threaten to
carrot and the
withhold
stick. The
funding.
problem is the stick is much bigger than the carrot.
Yeah.
Yes,
There is no carrot.
yeah, so, challenge there. So at the end of the day, we end up with a budget. So our fiscal '24 budget was $52,939,940. Our proposed budget is $54,245,759. You will notice that there was a rounding in your version, there was a small rounding error, and the difference was off by $1 in the increase. I fixed that in what's on the screen, and it's arbitrary. We have rounding errors all the time in sort of this, where Excel rounds things. So we have a net increase of 2.47. This is a, as we talk about it, this is a below service level budget relative to the services we provided last year and even the year before. And some of that is due to the loss of ESSER funds. I mean, that's just a reality. We had a level of service and we're not able to provide that level of service anymore due to the loss of those funds.
What's happening to our surrounding districts? I assume everybody on the same schedule with the loss of ESSER funds.
That is an excellent question. I think it's a good segue to the next slide, which talks about nearby districts.
Yep. Well, this is some of these are nearby, but this is largely regional districts. If you Google though, Amherst Public Schools where I live, they're in a budget crisis. They have a shortfall in the millions. They're made up of really two entities. So there's the regional, middle, and high school, and then there is Amherst, and then there's Pelham. They have, I believe, a $500,000 shortfall at the elementary level and a larger shortfall at the middle high school level. I don't know, Northampton not that long ago was
Northampton's looking at about $2 million excess above what, I think the city said they could do a 4% increase, which is about $2 million short of what they need for level services. I can tell you, my hometown, the initial increase from the school department is 14%. So everybody is kind of feeling the loss of ESSER funds this year.
If you take a look at the slide that's up now, this was as of a little while ago. We don't have more updated numbers, but you do have a couple outliers, Gateway and Hamilton Wenham, who have some pretty low increases. But overall, those increases are all pretty high, and the mid is commensurate, a little above where we are. You can see there are some districts that are pending potential override votes, and then there are a larger number that are absolutely planning for layoffs and reductions in staff. So, very similar challenges. We're not alone. Doesn't help. But it at least, we can kind of commiserate with some people. So where do we end up on the assessment side? So right now, we're looking at Camden at a total assessment of $8,815,131. Wilbraham at $30,242,184. And then when we talk about the nitty-gritty details of how that looks for each town in terms of their changes, Camden has a net increase of $246,938, or 2.88%. And Wilbraham, with this figure, would be looking at a total change of $1,122,960. We know, Mark, the other night you shared that you have a $1 million placeholder. We're mindful of that. This is just, it's where we are at the moment, and everything we're doing is endeavoring to, sort of reach a place that works.
Things that make me wonder, so the number is right, but the percent change is different on the colored sheet. Yeah, it is.
Is that a type? It could be.
I don't know, it's 3.8, it's 4.05 on the colored sheet.
4.05, if you look above, 4.05 is the operating. 3.86 when you figure in the debt assessment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you factor in the debt assessment, it's a little, right?
Yeah.
You can,
We kind of take that one out because it's kind of a fixed cost.
Yeah, you can kind of split hairs over that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, sorry, I didn't mean
I know, I was like, well, what's that?
Yeah. So, a couple of visuals in terms of where our funding comes from. It's no secret, most of our funding is coming from that Wilbraham assessment. We get a fair bit of chapter 70, not as much as some districts, but again, we're in that hold harmless situation, so that really never goes up by very much. Hamden assessment is a decent sized piece. We have some chapter 71, that is the transportation. You'll see E&D being used, and interest. So those are the major revenue categories for us. And then where does the money go? You'll see that the vast majority, it goes straight to instructional services. Some other items that are directly related to students, though, is other school services. So that is nursing, that includes OT, PT, things like that. Other services that go directly to students. Out of district, again, when we send students out of district, that is absolutely a student-facing service that we provide. Fixed costs, that's our health insurance, our Medicare, things like that we really have very little control over. Retirement, things like that, pensions. Operations and maintenance, the things that keep the school clean and running, and so on. And then, really one of the smaller slivers is that leadership and administration piece. We run a pretty lean ship here. If you look at other districts as a percentage, they tend to be higher in terms of administration. We've shared that before. So finally, we get to capital, right? We do have, and we've been talking about this for a while, the one project that we have for Minnetonka for this year is upgrading the wireless access points. As we've shared, the wireless access points are original to the building. Not every wireless access point is original to the building, but the system in general. So we really are needing to move to more or less the next standard, I believe, which is 6. That is probably overdue by a couple of years. A typical Wi-Fi system has about an 8 to 10 year life span.
How are these wireless access points different than what we just did, was it last year or the year before?
I think he's talking about the network switches.
You're talking about the network
Yes.
switches. So
Yes.
that we have a core switch and a series of switches that support that provide data to this school and to all of the other member schools. So this is more or less the network hub. That core switch is the biggest piece. It's a pretty expensive piece of equipment.
If I may, the wireless access points plug into the switches,
Yeah.
and the switches plug into the core. It's how all the information goes out.
Okay. You need all the parts and pieces working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we've replaced some wireless access points and we tried to upgrade them onesie twosie when it makes sense. But the system as a whole, the wireless access points themselves that we have in right now are dated. The system itself, the server, the controllers are all very dated. They're largely 12 years old. I think as I shared the main controller, we did buy a spare. So knowing that this is a system that could, we can't find parts for it, we can't find replacements anymore, like many things. I authorized Bill to go out and spend a little bit of money. It was, $5,000 to $7,000, not a lot, on a replacement. So I believe he's actually taken out the original, put in the replacement controller, and we're using our old controller as a backup. So it's not a used controller, but it's basically an end-of-life, non-warranty or non-warrantyable product, but it's at least giving us a backup if something were to happen this year. And obviously everything's pending funding, so we're going to wait to see on that.
In my house, I change my wireless router every 3 years. So I've replaced it 4 times in the last 12 years.
So,
Man, does that mean I'm being a bad dad? I haven't done mine in 4 years?
you're limiting your children's access.
That's
I have
probably
more
a
and
lot
more
positive.
things that go on it. I have, light switches and everything like that, and that you just can't, the old technology can't keep up.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't have a light switch.
Well, the cuts we're making at Green Meadows, for the staffing, is that largely attributable to the changes in the programming being offered there, or is it budget impact, because of budget impacts?
It's attributable to the fact that all of the middle school students
Are not gonna be there.
are not going to be
Yeah.
there. They've all transferred to.
So those would be happening regardless of what was going on with the budget?
Yeah. I mean,
You would assume that if the program isn't gonna be there.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say that the teaching positions would be gone. You know, if there weren't budget constraints, we probably would use them for other things that we
Right.
There's
I've
always
requested,
budget constraints, but yes.
Right.
coaches or
Yeah.
other things
I mean,
that
all of this
principals
does lead us,
requested.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, all of this, it's somewhat beneficial to the budget, but we've had a lot of conversations about the overcrowding at the middle school. We are looking to spend some money to build out classrooms in the library right now. Right now, there are a whole bunch of sort of ramshackle dividers if you've been through there. It's not really, and particularly if we're not sure what's happening with the 8th grade coming forward, we really felt it was best to at least, we're putting up their semi-permanent, I guess we'll call them, walls. Because of fire alarms and lights and things like that, we can't go all the way to the ceiling anyhow. But we're gonna have, over the summer, we'll have real walls put in that will hopefully provide them with a little more instructional space. But it is at the sacrifice of the fact that that school no longer has a library, a functional library.
Let me ask if, are these budget moves with regards to Green Meadows contingent on the article passing to amend the regional agreement?
No.
No,
So these can be implemented
yeah.
independent of that article?
Okay, so based on transfers, I think we have, is it 5 or fewer middle school students at Green Meadows right now?
Although we're balancing on thin ice, right? Because right now, the majority of middle school instruction has been moved to Wilbraham Middle School by
Yes.
choice. If all of a sudden, the next couple classrooms, couple class generations of parent families decide that they are not gonna allow the children to come to Wilbraham, then those are gonna be cut, then all those costs, then we're gonna have a huge increase in costs for that year.
All those
That's
positions will have to go back.
Reopening instruction
Yep.
in Green Meadows or, you know, somewhere where the space, I guess, would be Green Meadows.
Right, so that's some of the benefit we've been talking about with sort of regionalizing, say, Wilbraham Middle School and maybe finding some sort of pressure relief valve for the middle school as well. So that was sort of the 8th grade to the high school.
It's something we should consider, because we've been dragging our feet on finalizing what we want to do for the amendments to the regional agreement. And maybe what we maybe need to be considering is getting the agreement amended to include what we're actually doing now, so that we're stable where we are.
So a
It's
smaller
something
bite of
to
the
consider.
apple, and then another smaller bite of the apple in the future.
Well, I mean, just, right now, just be able to swallow the bite we've already taken is where we are right now. It's something that we should consider as the bigger group, right? And it's a risk, like when I sit here and look at these numbers, you know.
Have you decided if there's gonna be an amendment at this annual town meeting?
We have decided,
You have not
we
decided?
have decided.
You have?
Right, that we will not be bringing anything to town meeting in the spring.
Somebody, I think Nick Bro asked me that recently, I said, I don't know, I haven't heard.
At least not for the spring,
Nothing.
so there's always
Yeah.
potential for the fall,
Oh, yeah, okay.
for something.
Well, that's good, because for annual town meeting purposes, it's a
Mhm.
plan for that.
Mhm.
Because that would have been a lengthy discussion.
In the interest of time, I won't play them now, but these are a couple of these. I shared them last year. They're,
Yeah. Do we want to share them again this year if we show them once?
we can if we want. I mean, I don't think we need to watch them again now, but we could share them at the school committee meeting. So then, you know, this is exactly what Zillow uses. This is Great Schools data relative to sort of their vision of school quality. You can see where we rate, you know, 6, 6, 7 out of 10. You know, and I think, you know, it's important to envision where we want,
What is that school district that's a 9 up in the right?
that's Belchertown. just, one of the Belchertown schools is a 9. Don't know exactly which one. I can look it up. I mean, greatschools.com has all of this data. It's very easy to go through. So again, same core they had last year. Someone once said, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to tell you what we value, what's important to us, and bringing it forward.
Who was it that said it? Was it Obama?
By,
Biden.
yeah, okay. I'm not, I realize it's political, but it's a, regardless of, I think, where
It's a good
you
quote.
stand politically, I think it's a good
Yeah.
statement, right? And I've heard it said before, right? It's
I thought it was
in
Provost
different
myself.
terms.
I thought it was Provost myself.
Probably it might have been.
I think it was.
Or at least, I mean, I've heard people say that exact thing in different words. I just, that happened to come from something that Biden said, I think, a couple years ago.
It's an important sentiment.
Yeah.
The sentiment's what's important, rather, I'm less worried about where it came from, but it is an important sentiment.
They share that at the MASC at the trainings when you're talking about budget. They say your budget is a reflection of your priorities and your values.
Which I think is beyond debate. I think that's, you know,
So
you
that's
can have
the
overpay
whole
for it, you
shebang.
don't value it. Well, thank you, that is a very, very good budget
I think
presentation.
you all do have John's memo as well. That kind of highlights where we're standing, if you have to make cuts and where those would come from. We continue to try to keep them away from staff, as best we can, and the students in mind.
Do either of you have questions about this document?
Do I personally? No, I think we answered some of them during the presentation, so.
Sure.
I did have a few, but I asked them. There may be some tomorrow. I'm sure there will be some tomorrow.
Is there any advice you would have as we prepare for our third consecutive night of doing this tomorrow?
No,
Well, you did it yesterday?
And Hamden?
We shared it with Hamden.
oh, I didn't.
Oh.
So, no, I think it,
And it's like,
Mhm.
no, I don't think so. I think it was well done, it's simple, it's succinct, it's clear, it's,
I think a highlight of what a level service budget is important.
one thing I was thinking about, and I'll just say this,
Far from.
No, if you could explain, and just explain what a level service budget is. I know that it's a term that gets said a lot, but I don't know that everybody,
Sure.
Okay, so maybe explain the difference between where we're
We
at,
can,
what level
yeah.
service would be.
well, the one thing I would caution, I actually thought of it as you were going through it, I said, I'll just skip it, but since it came out, I think you call it a below service budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'd caution that word because you're adding things at the same time. So if we weren't adding things, I would hear it, but if I'm not adding things, it's hard to understand how it's below service, because we're replacing things.
I think
That's
explaining what it is, what a level service budget is and what, the differences.
I mean, we're valuing certain things over other things now by adding voc tech at the 9th grade, we're doing things like that, and so. I just,
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
not saying what you said was wrong, it's just,
Yeah,
And that's
but
tomorrow,
we
7:30.
may have added those, but we've lost a lot more.
but you added ESSER, you have also have ESSER positions in there, that, and again, I think you just replace certain things, and I'm not,
Well, only what, I mean, only about a
you're
third,
keeping.
only a third or less of this was ESSER.
You're keeping 2 more ESSER positions that you added 2 ESSER positions that you're keeping.
Do those strategic plan
Yeah,
initiatives?
those are
So
strategic.
I think, well, I
Got
know,
it.
but I'm just saying for, I think just for,
Right.
so people understand
Right.
what these positions, so if
Right.
you're eliminating these ESSER positions, what ESSER positions are remaining? What are they? Because if they are, it does go back into our strategic
So
plan
we've
initiatives.
we've cut
Right.
other things in favor of retaining those positions.
Exactly.
More or less what
I'm-
we've done.
Yes, I'm not saying what you've done is
Yes.
improper or
Oh,
not
right.
in reaction to what
Fair enough.
but you've replaced certain things with
Yes.
other things, so.
And I just created a folder and share it with you, so you
Yeah.
can just drop in
Yeah, first thing in the morning, I'll,
whatever you want to do.
What do you think about, will we be able to, are we in the realm, do you think we'll be able to get the?
Well, we're far closer than we've been in years.
Right.
Where are we going to end up, I don't wanna characterize, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna, I hate to say anything, but I don't think it's gonna get worse than we're at the gap now. So, there's some moving parts still within our budget. I mean, I think we don't need to vote your budget, frankly, because our meeting isn't until June, but we have to react to the Hamden Town meeting, so we're planning on voting your budget by next week. If it's not this Wednesday, it'll be next Wednesday, so that you have it in time for your vote. So, yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I don't think that's, I mean, we got about $100,000 gap, $120,000 gap right now, which is far better than we've been in years. So,
I think advisory is gonna support the budget.
well, you guys always got up easy, so it's easy.
We're just trying to pay our fair share, Mark.
Over the years, everything changes. 5 years from now, it could be the opposite.
It's changed, it hasn't changed in a long time.
The pendulum swings.
Yeah, there may be a lot of babies coming in Hamden, you don't know.
I've been involved in budget discussions where it's the opposite dynamic.
Yeah.
Hamden's the limiting factor.
Yeah.
It happens.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Very good. Well, thank you very
Anyone
much.
with any other comments or anything like that? Our next meeting, did we say when we want to do this here?
I would do that.
You have a public hearing on the budget next Thursday, so.
The 21st is our public hearing, the 25th is our budget roundtable.
Oh, I wanted to bring up one quick
Well,
thing.
I have this Friday open, you don't wanna put something on?
I'll put it on Friday, I'm open. We were also thinking that, that next year, we could have, give capital a seat at the table. Wilbraham, and I know that Hamden doesn't have capital.
It's not active.
Okay.
the only caution to that is oftentimes we're not talking about capital items, so that's, I mean, I think
Yeah.
you have the perfect world today, this year with Todd, who also sits on capital.
Yeah, right, oh, that's
So-
what it was, right, we have
Todd
Todd.
sits on capital as
covers
well,
both,
because
right.
FinCom has 2 seats on capital, but
I got you.
most of the meeting doesn't cover.
No, if we
Yeah.
have Todd, then we're good.
Yeah,
Right?
but I'm not sure what it'll be next year, so.
Okay.
It could be just portions of meetings or
Yeah.
select meetings where we're talking
But
about.
definitely
capital.
to-
You may notify, if you do have someone from capital, which I think is a great idea, I think it's important, but you might wanna like let them know this is, we're gonna cover capital at this meeting, if that's the case, so.
That's actually, you know, we might actually want to have dedicated finance subcommittee meeting or two just for discussing capital.
That could be a way of doing it, yeah.
We
that might be a
kind of
better way.
sort of did that in the beginning of this year, before we got into budget season, but then we missed some stuff.
Right.
In those
Oh,
early
yeah.
discussions, which.
We should have revisited capital
We should
again
make
in
sure we
January.
don't do, but like, the fall probably is a good time to have some finance subcommittee meetings to discuss what we anticipate for capital. Yeah, you know, and then invite, if we have a dedicated meeting for it, we could invite the entire town capital committee if they wanted to come. I don't know, who's on it, Mark? I never served on the capital committee.
Jim Rooney, Nick Menalakis, Todd, Joe, I'm not sure who the 5th person is, there's
All
5 members.
FinCom people.
No, there's 2 from FinCom, and then there's 3 that the selectmen appoint.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can do.
That's probably a good idea, doing a meeting for capital.
Yeah.
Way in advance, so that they can better understand. Yeah, early on.
Excellent. All right, does anyone have anything else? Can I have a
So we're not
motion?
meeting prior to,
Yeah, I don't think there's a
Okay.
need to, that's what kind of today was.
great,
If something comes up, we can always,
motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we are so adjourned.
We are off. We are now.
Right behind you.
So Nicholas had